everybody, this is Carisa Bunten with 7th Street Gifts in Newport, Kentucky. From the Lawrenceburg Public Library and our small business, we'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday and celebrate our 12th month and our 12th flower, technically our berry, hawthorn, for the month of December 2021. So this is what we're going to do today, is we're going to quickly talk about the hawthorn berry. And then on the back, I have a really great, super easy and practical recipe for a simple syrup. So what's in your take-home DIY Year of the Flowers kit is an ounce of certified organic food-grade hawthorn berries. And I know berries technically aren't flowers, but we kind of fudged a little bit because berries are very seasonal, right? When you think of a cranberry or a holly berry in the holiday season in December. And the berries come from tree flowers. And I bet you just most of us from life experiences and enjoying botanicals know that tree flowers are certainly lovely but very fragile. So they come for what, maybe 3 or 4 days, a week if you're lucky, and then they blow off and they're gone forever. So they're very difficult to harvest and dry and keep. So that's why we're going to celebrate the hawthorn berries but be thankful for the flowers that gave us them. Now the species that we're going to use in your bag is the Crataegus rosaceae. Yeah, say that 3 times fast. And one exciting thing about hawthorn is that it's very common in our area and grows all over, but there are a lot of different species. But the species can be used interchangeably, meaning you don't have to be sure that you have this specific species to be able to collect the berries and use them for medicine. So it's a really safe and easy botanical to work into your home apothecary and to collect and harvest on your own, because as long as you're 110% you have a hawthorn tree, then anything you harvest or collect off of that is safe to ingest or use externally for plant medicine. So one of the attributes of hawthorn berries is they're red and they're very tart. They look very similar to crab apples, except one thing that's different about them is they have small pits or stones, very similar to that of like an olive. So you wouldn't want to just pop one into your mouth and eat it. You have to be very mindful of the little pits and stones. And that's one reason why we're going to introduce a muslin bag to our recipe, so we eliminate the concern of accidentally getting a little pit or stone in our recipe. Now, all the way back to ancient Asian medicine to today's modern Western medicine, the hawthorn is your go-to for just an overall heart health, a cardiac protector, and a cardiac or heart tonic. And so it helps circulation, that was what I was at a loss for, and blood pressure, and also has a lot of flavonoids and like trace elements that feed a cardiac, healthy cardiac regimen. But they're hard to find isolated on their own or like in little supplements or things of that nature. So the very best thing is the true whole hawthorn berry that hasn't been like picked or plucked apart. So also for like a heartache hawthorn tonic, you'll see a lot of people who are like suffering from a broken heart or just melancholy and sadness. Hawthorn berries have oftentimes been given to them in tea or tincture, syrup, or jelly forms to kind of try to lift their spirits and help their hearts in an emotional way as well. So some just suggestions to look up on your own to use your hawthorn berries from your bag or that you collect on your own. This fall, actually in winter, is a perfect time. I bet you there's still some hawthorn berries out there if the birds haven't beaten you all to them. Would be to tincture, and hawthorn berries tincture really, really well. To make a nice simple syrup, and that's what we're going to do, or suggest that you would try. They jelly incredibly well, and they are so thick and viscous after they get boiled with sugar. You need very little gelatin, if any at all, to get them to thicken up and set. They infuse really well into all types of vinegars, but white vinegars in particular pick up their pretty red color and make kind of like a deep crimson, sort of dusty rose infused color white vinegar that's really nice for like greens and salads, and it looks pretty. They infuse incredibly well into honey, and I've even seen several recipes to make hawthorn berry ketchup, which I'm going to try. I've never done it, but the recipes look really good and super easy. And it's also a good idea if you have people or yourself and your family that are sensitive to nightshade, which would be like a tomato, and nightshade plants that you could give them a ketchup, kind of like a relish with a similar flavor and consistency with a berry, a hawthorn berry, instead of a nightshade plant. And I'm going to flip this around, and then we're going to talk about our super fun suggestion. And it's really good for this time of year. And you'll find a lot of other conflicting recipes and really other, I wouldn't say conflicting, but I guess different recipes and other techniques. But I've done this for a long time, and this is what I like to call my ain't nobody got time for that Hawthorn Hardy syrup recipe. Because a lot of the other recipes take a lot of time, like 3 or 4 hours in the kitchen. Special equipment like vices and presses and lots of canning jars and lids. And this to me is a super practical way to use just what's on hand with the addition of your hawthorn berries from us. And just use your time wisely. So what my number one tool of choice is a nice crock pot. And then if you don't want to do a crock pot, you can always make your own double boiler, or you may have a double boiler. A lot of people who can a lot still have those around. And so in this recipe in a crock pot is going to be 6 hours. And a double boiler, if you did the exact same thing, but you stood right there and didn't walk away from it and worked like in a whole straight stretch, it'd be about 45 minutes, perhaps an hour. Okay? So I'm going to pretend that you've got a crock pot right here. And you don't have to worry about it as long as it's cleaned out, because all of these are food grade ingredients, and you're going to make this to ingest and put into your body anyway. So all you have to do is just wash it out really well, and you can use it again, just as if you'd had a roast or a chicken or anything else in there. So into your crock pot, you're going to do 2 cups of hot water, and you want it steaming hot, almost boiling. And you're going to pour that into the crock pot. And then you're going to add 1 cup of honey. And you're going to add your 1 cup of honey to the hot water in your crock pot. And I know you guys know, but I just have to say it, you know how thick and sticky and viscous honey is. You want to use like a baking spatula and scrape the sides and just get every little bit drop out. Or maybe go just a little bit over a cup if you're afraid that you're going to have too much left behind, because if it's like a really thick, raw, like buckwheat honey or something, it can be difficult to get it all out. And then you want 1 ounce of bone-dry hawthorn berries. And that's what you have in your Year of the Flowers Make It and Take It DIY kit. And what we're going to do is put ours directly into the muslin bag. And that way it eliminates one thing, which is a pretty big process at the end if you don't do it, the need to strain. Because to strain these out and get all their stones and pits and the skins and the fruit, once it like rehydrates, it gets really fluffy. It's just difficult to strain out. And then we eliminate the concern of accidentally getting a pit or a stone, a little teeny pit or stone. So you're just going to take your muslin bag, your drawstring muslin bag, and pour your ounce of hawthorn berries into it. Okay? And then I just made mine like a little funnel. It's not any big trick, but it does help. I pinch it into like a V there. Pop my bag open and pour it right in there. And then one important thing about this is we really want to be sure that you use a bone-dry hawthorn berry for this recipe, specifically because it's going to have an indefinite shelf life. Now, if you used a fresh hawthorn berry, it would not have an indefinite shelf life, and you would need to keep it refrigerated for safety, and you would know that in about, maybe 7 to 14 days, you would have to watch it really closely and be sure it was still good and able to be ingested. So the best way to like eliminate that concern and not be concerned about it kind of going south on you, or having to keep it refrigerated and be afraid that it sat out on the counter too long, is just to introduce a bone-dry botanical, and then you just eliminate that concern about a wet, fresh berry fostering a potential mold or bacteria that could make your syrup go bad. So then other things that you can add to it, and this would be kind of to taste, would be cinnamon. And cinnamon is combined with a lot of heart health and heart tonics as well. So that would be my first one. You could even put a pinch of ground cinnamon in, or just drop like a cinnamon stick. And then that pairs well with hawthorn berry in flavor and then in medicinal uses as well. Anise is a really nice one. So if you have like an anise star, but it is that strong licorice flavor, so you want to be sure everybody was on board with that. And then cardamom powder or pods also make a really nice flavor. And those are all herbs or spices that you would probably be somewhat familiar with already. So you would know if you liked that flavor. Then we're going to leave this in the crock pot for about 6 hours. So we're going to add 2 cups of hot water. And remember, our water is going to be hot when we pour it into the crock pot. 1 cup of honey. 1 ounce of bone-dry hawthorn berries put into a muslin bag to eliminate the need to strain and the concern of ingesting their pits or their stones. And then if you want to taste, you could add spices such as cinnamon, anise, or cardamom, or anything else that you may like. You probably have your own palate and flavors at home. And then you're going to leave this in the crock pot for about 6 hours with the lid on. Now, I'm going to put this not in the recipe but in the video. If you're going to be home for an hour and you're able to start that out on high for about an hour before you head out for the day or start to do your chores and not be there to watch it, that's like in a perfect situation. But if you can't, go on ahead and start it on low and it'll be absolutely fine. And you would leave it on low for your whole 6 hours. I'm going to write that here. So low, not warm, because most crock pots have high, low, and warm. So you want low. And then high for first hour, if possible. Okay? It's not a have to. All right. So it's going to stay in the crock pot for about 6 hours on low. And then after 6 hours of infusing, you're going to leave this on the heat. You're not going to remove it, okay? And then obviously, I would think it would go without saying, but I'll say it just to be sure. You're going to mix and blend it really, really, really well. And then with super clean hands, too, you're going to pull this out. And it could just be that you hold onto the drawstrings and use like your spatula or spoon and press against the crock pot side. But you really want to wring out and press all that berry juice that you can. But you want to be sure that they stay in the bag. And so when it was cool enough, I would probably just take it and go like this and wring it. But it might be too hot for that. So you could just kind of pull it up. I can picture it on the side of your crock pot and your spoon or spatula and just press it really, really good. Be like a human vice because you want to get every little drop out of here. Now here's where we're going to add the ingredient that is going to make this an indefinite shelf life and preserve it. And also it acts as a really good solvent to pull out any of the last little bit of medicine that the water and the honey didn't do on their own. Because alcohol is hard to beat as far as a solvent for pulling out the medicinal attributes of botanicals. So then you're going to add a half a cup, which is the same difference as 4 ounces, of at least a 60 proof alcohol. And this could be brandy, vodka, anything you want. It has to be at least 60 proof or higher. So it can be higher if you want it to be. Even like a moonshine or a pure grain if you wanted to do something really potent. And in a way, that would almost be better if you had an aversion to adding alcohol, like you're kind of like, oh, I wish we didn't have to add alcohol to this. The higher the proof, the faster the rate of evaporation when you add it to your base concoction there, and the less alcohol you'll actually have left in the end. So you would think the higher proof would make it stronger, but with this method that we're using, and the ain't nobody got time for that, Hawthorn Hardy syrup, it will evaporate and kind of cook it out. So it would almost be to your advantage if you had an aversion to a high alcohol content to get like a higher proof, because less of it would be left behind. So then you're going to add this to your concoction, to your crock pot. So you're going to add a half a cup of at least a 60 proof or higher alcohol, food grade alcohol, like a cocktail alcohol, not like a rubbing alcohol. And then you're going to allow it to simmer for another hour. So that would be a total of 7 hours in the crock pot. And probably, I would say 20 more minutes in your double boiler. And that's after alcohol's added. Okay? And then if you did do the double boiler method and you added the alcohol while you were right there, you would certainly stay right there and be incredibly mindful. You wouldn't have the flexibility and the ease of putting the lid on and walking away like you would with a crock pot, okay? Especially a high proof. So it goes without saying that you would have to be very mindful and stay right there with it and kind of tend to it if you did the double boiler method, okay? So then after we have our half a cup, 4 ounces of food grade cocktail alcohol, at least a 60 proof or higher, we allow it to simmer for another hour. And this is going to evaporate mostly out, so you will have alcohol content to this, but not as much as you think, and not too much to like give to a child or somebody who says, oh well, I don't drink or anything. It would be such a trace amount. You're just using the food grade properties to A, act as an kind of a third solvent to pull out and extract every little bit of vitamin, mineral from your hawthorn berry, and B, to give it an extended shelf life, act as a natural preservative, so you don't have to worry about your syrup fostering mold or bacteria, okay? And then again, you would press your bag really well with either your hands if it's cool enough or with your spatula against your crock pot or your double boiler, and you just want to get every drip drop of your hawthorn berries out of there. Now this bag will be all swollen and puffy and full by the time your syrup process is done. Because these berries are going to rehydrate and they almost go 3 times their size and weight. So when you start out with an ounce, you end up with about 3, sometimes even 3.25 of your berries. So don't be surprised if they're all kind of swollen and big and your muslin bag's sort of bulging or whatever. That means that what you were doing was working and you've rehydrated these and now you're extracting the medicine out of them. And then you can bottle or jar. So if you have nice medicine bottles or amber bottles or bottles that you've kind of held onto that you want to use, that's a perfect time to use them, but there's not a darn thing wrong with using just a really good old spaghetti jar or a jar that you've held onto that's washed out and super clean, of course like a nice mason or canning jar, and using like a wide mouth. It's easier to pour into. You generally don't need a funnel. You can even ladle it in. There's less spills. It's easier to get in and out of, especially if you have older kids or teenagers that are allowed to use it freely as they would like. They can just open up the wide mouth jar lid and put their teaspoon in and kind of serve themselves right out of it, right? So it's whichever you have on hand. Bottles are nice and they're aesthetically pleasing, but you have to funnel them in and they can be a little harder to find and a little more expensive. So I don't want to discourage anybody from using just a nice super clean bone dry mason jar or canning jar, something like that, that's wide mouth, because it would serve just as well. And then again, this has an indefinite shelf life because we have added the alcohol to it as a preservative. So that means it's going to last forever. If anything, it would evaporate and maybe kind of start to get thicker, but it wouldn't go bad, and then you do not have to refrigerate it. You can leave it out on the shelf, right? So that gives it a shelf life. And then as far as dosage goes, here's kind of a pretty easy guide to follow, especially for any botanical that we did this year for the Year of Flowers, is for every 50 pounds that you weigh, you would do 1 teaspoon of medicine, okay? So then too, if you had a little kid that was like a toddler, right, that was above the age of 1, because our base has honey in it, we all know you would never introduce honey to a kid less than 1. You would do, he weighs 25 pounds, right? He's a chunky little toddler. You would do a half a teaspoon, right? And then let's say we have an adult that weighs 150 pounds. What would they get? They would get 3 teaspoons, okay? So this is just a really nice way to do a ratio. And then if it's a little off, you have somebody who weighs 120 pounds. Well, we know they would get 2 teaspoons for sure. And you could always do like the half teaspoon up and do the math. You would just divide 50 by whatever, or you would divide 1 teaspoon by whatever the weight is with 50, and it would tell you your dosage. So it's a pretty simple, easy way to remember it. And now remember, with your bottle or your jar, you could even have a teaspoon from your kitchen tied to the side, and everybody would know that that was their dose, and you would just pour yourself 1 or 2 or 3 teaspoons, depending on your weight, and then you would administer it and drink it yourself, okay? And again, this is the Hawthorn Hearty Syrup with an indefinite shelf life, and you have everything you need in your DIY kit, sponsored by the Friends of the Library and the Lawrenceburg Public Library, provided by 7th Street Gifts. We're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday through the holiday seasons. You can check us out online for our hours. And then we're super excited because Lawrenceburg's asked 7th Street Gifts back, and we were thrilled to come with bells on. And we're going to start 2022 with the year of stones and crystals. So your takeout kits will be a stone or a crystal of the month, and we'll have a little idea and a fact card in there with them, and then we'll do a quick little film to tell you maybe a little bit of history, prophetic lore, and ways that you can use your own stone or crystal of that month. So join us next year for the year of stones and crystals. And in the meantime, I hope you have a well-stocked herbal botanical apothecary from the year of flowers. And thanks so much to you and Lawrenceburg Public Library.